Hey guys, this is Comic Uno and Comic Frontline, and today I'm doing Comic Uno episode 164. And this is a show where I review all the comics I read this week in one show, so let's get started. We go worst pick of the week to best pick of the week. So I read 22 comics this week, which was, a pretty average haul for me. But let's move on to number 22. What was my worst pick of the week this week? And that was Surgeon X issue 1. I just personally couldn't get into this one. I didn't really like the blocky type artwork. I thought it was very heavy on the inking, and then there's panels where people's foreheads look too large, and then I just didn't really like the premise too much about her being this vigilante surgeon. I never really connected to the character or the world they were trying to create, saying that medicine, obviously medicine is very important in life, but they put a focus on it in this issue, but I didn't really like it. So I gave it 1.5 stars actually. I just did not connect to this one. Moving on to number 21, which is a book I'll probably be dropping now, and that is Blue Beetle issue 1. I didn't love the Rebirth issue, but I still really didn't like the first issue either. The coloring is really off. The artwork is plain, and the story is kind of blah also. Like, I don't really care about Jaime or Cord's relationship, even though they're like in school together. Like, Cord comes in to like talk about something, and I'm like, that should be an awesome moment because you see these two worlds collide, but you don't really know the two worlds at all, so it doesn't feel like a first issue. It feels like a 20th issue. It's like, hey, you know these characters, right? Well, you should, love that he's at Jaime's school. And you know Jaime's friends, right? You should care that they're in a fight right now. It takes the reader for granted, I feel, because it just doesn't really explain a lot of things of why the reader should care. So I gave this 2 stars, and like I said, I'll most likely be dropping Blue Beetle. Alright, so that was number 21. Moving on to number 20, another book that is actually really hard for me to drop, but I'm just not enjoying it, and that's The Flash issue 7. So this continues the Godspeed story, and you kind of understand a little bit more about Godspeed in the issue, but the artwork is still the same. It just feels, I don't know, it just doesn't work for me. It just feels, messy in a way. I just don't really like it. I mean, I definitely can see why people would enjoy this art style, because you have like kind of the cool electricity bolts, but it doesn't really work for me. And it takes me out of the story. But also, again, Godspeed, it just feels like a complete rip-off of the Flash television show, and he just feels so generic as a villain, especially as a Flash villain, and there's just nothing really special here. As much as I want to see Wally's journey and all that, I'm not really enjoying The Flash right now, so I'll probably be dropping it for the time being. So, The Flash issue 7 gets 2 stars. Alright, that I believe was number 20. Yes, number 19, a book I actually was really excited for and disappointed me, and that was Web Warriors issue 11. So, Web Warriors, if you guys don't know, has my favorite character of all time, which is Mayday Parker, and the issue just kind of leaves it a really cheesy ending. So, we have Uncle Ben turn into Electricity Monster to defeat the Electro Monster. We have Norman Osborn shoot into this book for no complete reason, and he's like, oh, I gotta destroy the Web of Life. I'm like, alright, the Electro Monster or Norman Osborn? Who's the villain of this issue? Norman Osborn, again, just comes in too late into the story. And then, the end is, the way they recreate the Web of Life is by rock and roll. Now, I like that Web Warriors is a little cheesy. I think it works, but here was just over the top cheesy. I did like the art, that's why I was kind of above these other issues, but the story of it is just very weird, and was not a satisfying ending. I will say, though, the art is very cluttered, even though I like the art style. It's cluttered because there's a billion spider people in this issue, so you don't really get a focus on any character, or really any one particular character in this story. So, yeah, it just felt very rushed. I'm sure it was rushed, because it was a last issue. They probably didn't know it was the last issue. It's like, oh, we have to do all the story in one, and it felt very rushed because of it. So Web Warriors issue 11 gets 2 stars, and that was number 19. Moving on to number 18, another disappointing book, which was Nova issue 11. So Nova, I think I didn't like this issue as much because, first of all, I don't really have a connection to Richard Rider, so I don't really have that fandom type thing going on. But also, this whole issue was exposition. Literally, I mean, you turn each page of this book, and it's all the same thing. It's all this exposition of Richard Rider talking. I mean, you keep turning it. It's almost the whole book is exposition. And then you get to the end where it's like kind of predictable. It's heartfelt, but it's predictable of, Nova, which is Sam, talking to his mother, which was cool because I liked that relationship, him talking to his friends, which was cool, but it wasn't enough in the issue. The rest of it was so dry. It was just very dry. It just didn't feel like a great way to introduce, Richard Rider again. So I gave it 2 stars. I also don't love the coloring in the book. I think it kind of clashes, way too many oranges. Yeah, like here, it doesn't really appeal my eye. And again, this is like the middle of the book. The same exposition. You just turn throughout all these pages. It's the same orange color exposition. So Nova was a disappointing ending for me, but I will pick up the next Nova and see, hopefully Sam Alexander will be a part of it in some way. So Nova issue 11 gets 2 stars. Alright, so now we're moving on to number 17, I believe. Yes, number 17 is Generation Zero, issue 2. I'm upset to see this so low because I really liked issue 1. And I was very happy I liked a Valiant book. But then I think this book kind of got issue 2 blues, where they utilized the Generation Zero characters without fleshing them out, which was weird. It's just like all these Generation Zero characters, like, popping up, and as a newer reader, I just didn't care about them, and then the mystery wasn't there as much. I liked the ending where they end up kidnapping one of the girls, but the rest of it, I didn't really care for, so I gave it 2 stars. I probably will give the next issue a try, because I did really like the first issue, but like I said, definitely issue 2 blues for Generation Zero for this one. Moving on to number 16, which is Outcast issue 21. When this book is really good, it's good, but when it's slow, it's slow. Sorry for the dramatic voice. But yeah, Outcast, nothing really happens here. I love the art. I will say I love the art. But it's, our priest character gets kidnapped by the devil. They escape. That's the issue. Nothing else really happens here. The dialogue was okay between the priest and the devil. It was entertaining for the most part, I guess, but not entertaining enough that had to be the whole issue. So I gave Outcast issue 21 2.5 stars. Because I do like the artwork, but honestly, it's not really a necessary issue to read. Alright, I think we're up to number 15. There's a lot of low books this week. Number 15 is Detective Comics issue 941, which I still don't really know why we need this book, not this book, so we need Detective Comics, but I don't know why we need this story arc, this event, because it's really not doing much for the characters. Like, you get to see some character development between Stephanie and Cass, and then you have Gotham Girl and Nightwing, which they end up turning into monsters in the end. But really, I mean, you can have much better character development in their own series. Now, again, I'm glad that these characters are interacting. That's definitely the best part. But the artwork is very average. And again, this monster story in general is just not that interesting and just very forgettable for me. So, Detective Comics issue 941 gets 2.5 stars. Alright, we're moving on to number 14, at least we are now in the 3-star zone, and that is Wonder Woman issue 7. Artwork is gorgeous, but I will say this part is the slower part. Year 1 I do think is the better story, and this issue kind of proved it. Not a lot happens until the end, where Cheetah's cured, and you'll see what happens with that. But I didn't really care about the monster that cured her. I didn't feel as attached. I feel more attached to the Year 1 story. But like I said, why it's higher, the artwork is gorgeous. You do get a little bit between Diana and Steve, but this was a bit of a weaker issue for Wonder Woman. So Wonder Woman issue 7 gets 3 stars. Moving on to number 13, I want to say. Yes, number 13, which is a book I was looking forward to, but I don't know if it really hooked me for the next issue, and that's Frostbite issue 1 from Vertigo Comics. Frostbite, the beginning's slow because they have to establish the world of it's cold, so they need these heaters, and that kind of has to do with money and power. So they take these scientists, our main character is like a driver, so she takes people around because it's cold. So she takes these scientists, she learns that one of the scientists is the reason she doesn't have her family anymore, but at the same time, the daughter of the scientist, who's also a scientist, has the cure of frostbite and all that, so she has to save her. So there's a nice little twist in the end, a nice little twist in the end where she ends up killing the father. So I like that. That kind of like made me enjoy this issue, but I don't know if I completely enjoyed the world as much as I wanted to because it was so world heavy more than character heavy. Because you kind of know the main character, she's interesting, but you're not attached to her. So the world has to be super interesting, which it is, but, well, it's not super interesting. It's interesting, but not enough for me to get the next issues. So Frostbite issue 1 gets 3 stars, and that is number 13. Yes, number 13, and number 12, which is actually higher than it usually is, and that's Star Wars issue 23. Happy to see this a little higher. So, yeah, this was just a fun issue where we get to see Princess Leia and Han just race each other, literally race each other to be captain. I thought that was fun. And I would say the mission in general is kind of like, oh, okay, whatever, because they want to steal one of the ships, and, you know, it's a mission we've seen before. But I like the character attraction. That was definitely the best part, especially between Han and Princess Leia. The artwork is okay, it's still very dark, but I do think it's better than the extremely dark artwork we've been getting. But still, it's a little cartoonish, I would say. Some of the facial expressions could be better. I feel like their eyes really jolt out in this book also, so the artwork could be better, but the story was a bit of an improvement, so I gave it 3 stars. Alright, moving on to number 11, which is Titans, issue 3. So this issue was slower because it's still dealing with the Wally and Kadabra stuff, which I don't love that it's only focusing on Wally. As much as I love the character and I think he needs that story, this is a Titans book, and we really haven't had a story with any of the other characters. We have like little moments, but you know, they're not really doing much, and so I wanted a little bit more from them. Also, Kadabra in general seems like a prolonged villain, especially in this issue, but I like the Linda and Wally moments. I really like Karen that she was in this issue, even though they promoted a cover that she was gonna like be the star of this issue, but I guess they took that away because she's only in like 2 pages, and that would have been misleading. But at least she was in the issue, and her dealing with, hey, do I want to use my powers or not? Or do I want to live this family life that we have been living? So I'm really curious and excited to see what they do with Karen's character there. But yeah, I gave it 3 stars. It was an okay issue. The Linda and Wally things are great, but I just want them to be together. I want Linda to remember already. But yeah, Titans issue 3 gets 3 stars for me. It's an okay issue. It was a little bit of a slower one. Alright, I think we're up to number 10. Yes, we are up to number 10, which is also a book that improved a little bit, and that was Tomboy, issue 8. So Tomboy, I'm glad kind of focused on our main character a little bit more. I still think there's a lot of moving parts within, like, the police and all that, and there's a lot of characters to remember. But Addie, you know, we get to see her just being a little darker, especially after her best friend died. She kills another person, and they're starting to get a little closer to her, you know, realizing that she's the killer. Because right now they think the dad's the killer. So, I mean, that's pretty close to figuring out that she is. So, I liked it. I thought they dealt with the character stuff a little bit better in this issue than they have for the past couple of issues. So, I gave that 3 stars. And that was number 10. Moving on to number 9, which was a little higher, because again, this is a little bit of a weaker week for comics, but Action Comics issue 964, which we get to learn a little bit more about the other Clark Kent, and we see him interact with our Clark White. What is his name now? Clark White? I don't even think that's his name anymore. Is it Clark Smith now? He keeps changing his name. But it's them interacting, learning that this Clark is not a fake. I mean, we all know he's probably a fake in some way, but he doesn't know that he's fake. So he does have this little, this past life that is very intertwined with, the regular Clark Kent. But he's not an alien, he's human, so how is that possible? So it was cool just to see them interact. It wasn't an amazing issue, but it was a fun issue. So I gave Action Comics issue 964 3.5 stars. And that was number 9. Moving on to number 8, glad to see this a bit higher than I expected, but Teen Titans Rebirth, issue 1, which I thought was a pretty good setup issue. It is very much a setup issue, that's why it's not higher, but I like the art. It does remind me a bit of like kind of the abstract anime look that we usually get with like the Teen Titans cartoon, what you think about that. The coloring is a bit darker than I want it to be. I didn't love the color palette. But the story I feel like goes back to the pre-New 52 in a lot of ways. So we have like Beast Boy, who's a star, which is very pre-New 52. Even Starfire is not very much like Palmetti's run and Connor's run. It's more, and I love that run, but it's more of the, the nurturing character that we know and love from, pre-New 52. Then we have, who else do we have in this issue? Raven, I thought her story was a little forgettable, maybe because I'm just loving the Raven miniseries right now, that whatever they're doing with Raven here, it's just like, but I'm really liking her story somewhere else, especially because you only have such little time to tell her story. Wally also is a character I feel like I know enough about that I personally didn't need his story, because it's pretty, I know what's going on. If you're reading Flash, it's kind of repetitive, but you need it, obviously, just to introduce these characters. And then in the end, you have the predictable ending that Damian's the one who stole them and said, hey, let's make a team. So it was fun. I liked it. I think if you don't know anything about these characters, you learn about them, which is important. But if you're an old reader, there are some parts where you're like, I get the story, okay. But I thought the first half of the issue was the strongest, and then it kind of got weaker as the issue went on. But Teen Titans Rebirth issue 1 gets 3.5 stars, and I am excited to see where it goes. Alright, moving on to number 7, which is Spider-Woman issue 11, which is also kind of higher because it was like a weaker week this week. But I love the art style for this book. I think Veronica Fish does such a good job at manipulating other people's art styles, especially when, you love the art style before. And it kind of looks similar here, maybe because of the coloring, but I think Veronica Fish is just really good at doing that, and she did that with Fiona Staples' work in Archie also. But what I liked about this issue, it's Carol versus Spider-Woman. I do think Spider-Woman got, really angry. Jessica, she didn't really give her friend the benefit of the doubt, but I think that's more grieving than anything. And I like that she kind of says, hey, Carol, you're just not right. And then Carol's not hitting Jessica at all and trying to be a friend. She's trying to be level-headed. She's very level-headed in this event, if you didn't know. Sarcasm. But yeah, so we get to see Jessica just not wanting to deal with Carol. So I really like that, and I loved her little espionage outfit. I thought that was cool in the art. So overall, I think the art is definitely what impressed me the most, but it's cool to kind of analyze Carol and Jessica's relationship a bit more. So Spider-Woman issue 11 gets 3.5 stars. Moving on to number 6, which is Batgirl issue 3, which I thought was a very solid issue. First of all, still love the MMA aspect that Barbara just got beaten up, but at the same time, she's using her own power of looking at the past to kind of see who is this person, and she learns that this, the fighter is connected to the villain for Batgirl, and she still doesn't really understand how Kai's connected, but she wants to leave Kai. She's like, I just can't deal with you right now. And because she leaves Kai might be in danger. So we'll see how that goes in the next issue. But yeah, this is a very solid issue. Like I said, it's Batgirl kind of thinking, who are these villains? And using her power of looking at the past. Because we had the Fruit Ninja character from, I think it was the first issue, who said, don't look into the past, that's your weakness. But at the same time, Barbara looking at the past really helped her future. So, yeah, it was interesting. I liked how they did that. And I like the villains, and I like Kai as this shady character in the series. And of course I love Albuquerque's artwork. I will say again, some of his characters look similar to like American Vampire and his other work, but still really like the art style. So going into Batgirl, what did Batgirl issue 3 get? It did get 4 stars, and that is number 6. Moving on to my top 5. So what was my number 5? And that is Miss Marvel issue 11. So with this issue, we have a really emotional beginning, kind of a slow middle, and then it picks up the pace again with the ending. So anytime it had to do with Bruno and Kamala, you just felt the emotion. And so you have a really good opening with Bruno and Kamala's mom, where Bruno actually gets the bracelets that we've been seeing through the past couple issues for Civil War, and seeing how Bruno wants to be that friend for Kamala and be there, and he says, "I'll always be there for her." What was the exact line he said? Let me see. He said, "That's what I want to make for her, armor, so she'll always be safe." So it's always like him trying to protect her. So at this point, Kamala doesn't know what Bruno's, ending will be, if he'll die or not. So she has to deal with Captain Marvel, which is the hardest thing to do. She stands up to her, and Captain Marvel is so disappointed, doesn't even want to look at her face and say, I regret, for me giving my name to you. And Kamala is heartbroken, but at the same time, she has to protect her city. That's what's most important. And then she realizes, like, I have to go back to Bruno. Like, that's what's important, my friends, my family. And Bruno is alive, but he has to relearn how to walk. And because he did something wrong, a lot of his scholarships are taken away. So now when he's able to walk, he's going to move away. And Bruno, at this point, can't even look Kamala in the face and says, "Leave me forever. I don't want to see you, because you're always Miss Marvel, and that was more important than being my friend. And it always overtook us. I was always there for you, but you weren't there for me." And then she doesn't really know what to do, because the people she cares about, Captain Marvel, her mentor, Bruno, they're not there for her anymore. So now she's a solo act. So, like I said, the beginning was so strong, the ending was so strong, but the reason it didn't get higher is because the whole Becky thing I didn't really like. That's the part I thought was weaker, and it slowed down the issue a bit. But again, there's so much strong scenes here, though, that had to be in my top 5. So Miss Marvel issue 11 is number 5, and I gave that 4 stars. Moving on to number 4, which is a book I've been really surprised by, and that is Snotgirl issue 3. I am just really enjoying this book because you have this over-exaggerated artwork where it's like you're reading Vogue. You're reading a Vogue magazine with a little cartoon in the front. And what I really like about this is it's about this character, Lottie, who is the most surface character you'll ever meet. The only thing she cares about is her looks. She calls people, nicknames, saying, "Oh, you're normal girl. You're cute girl." So she doesn't even give the recognition that these are human beings and that they should have their own name. But at the same time, there's this really, really in-depth psychological story going on. And that's what's so interesting about Snotgirl, is that on the surface you think, oh, alright, she's a blogger, cool. But then you have this really psychological story where you're like, is she seeing things? What type of thing is going on with her? So I just love it. And then in the end, you don't know if Cool Girl's alive or not. And then, is it connected to the detective? I'm thinking maybe the detective is Cool Girl. I don't know why, because that ending is like it transitioned into the detective. So there's a lot of great players on the field, and the mystery is just really good, and the character development is really good. It's a book that I think you can really think about, and especially psychologically. So I'm loving Snotgirl. Snotgirl issue 3 gets 4 stars, and that is number 4. Moving on to number 3, which is Josie and the Pussycats, which I thought was a very solid issue. I will say the band I felt like was formed very quickly. They go into stardom a little quicker than I expected, because I want to know the friendships a bit more. But overall, I really like the characters. I do. I mean, especially Josie, who's our main character. We get to learn a little bit about her, and that she's a solo act. But at the same time, she's a lot better as a band. We learn about Melody, who's a little ditzy, and I'm excited to see them explore her ditziness a bit more. But she's the one who comes up with the name because she loves cats, and she keeps seeing this cats, and she's like, Josie and the Pussycats. And then Valerie, I think, is the character I want to learn more about, because she's kind of the outsider of the book, because Melody and Josie knew each other. And then Valerie comes in, and they don't really know each other, so I want to learn more about her. But the artwork is so gorgeous. Love it. I love the brightness. Love how the music's portrayed in the book. Yeah, overall, just really excited to see where the series goes. So I gave Josie and the Pussycats 4 stars, and that's number 3. Moving on to number 2, which is Spider-Gwen issue 12. A very solid ending to our Punisher and Spider-Gwen story, which leads us on a major cliffhanger, which is Gwen teaming up with Matt Murdock, the kingpin of her universe, just to save her dad, because her dad, to protect her and really totally accept her as Spider-Woman, turns himself in, and Gwen is destroyed. She doesn't know what to do. She doesn't have anyone in her life that, you know, is the confidant that our dad is. So, I will say there's some preachy lines. I think that's why it's not as higher, or, you know, higher than it is, or should be. But the artwork was really good. There's some camera angles that I felt like that were too close up, but the story between Gwen and her father was so well done. And then again, that ending was really good, and I liked overall how they ended the Punisher and Gwen story, even though he ran away, so I'm sure we'll see him again. I will say I want to know more about her powers, though, because they didn't really mention it here. I'm like, are they back? Like, I felt like they should have ended that arc with the Punisher arc, because those were kind of coinciding. But we'll see if we learn more about that in the next issue. So Spider-Gwen issue 12 gets 4 stars, and that's number 2. Moving on to number 1, a book that has been on the bottom but made it to the top, and that is Deathstroke issue 3. I was completely surprised by this book, because once again, I didn't really like Deathstroke before this. I was ready to drop it soon, but Rose saves the day for me, because this issue, it's a focus on Rose and Deathstroke's relationship, where Rose wants to do everything in her power to really please her father, and there's a scene where she's like sleeping with this guy, and Deathstroke's being a creeper and watching her. So in the middle of the issue, you find out, it's like, no, I wasn't sleeping with him. I was just sleeping with him. And Deathstroke says, hey, why would I care? You're so weak. And I love that Rose is trying to get acceptance from her father, because that's so much her pre-New 52 history. And that's what I really enjoyed with this issue, is bringing back Rose from the pre-New 52 in a new, fresh way. Also, the artwork's gorgeous. Love the action here, facial expressions. Here's an example of that. It's just a really fun issue, and again, a surprise issue, because I haven't been liking Deathstroke as much, but finally the mission is personal. Deathstroke wants to get the person who wants to kill Ravager, so it's personal now, and I'm really enjoying it. I kind of wish this was the first issue, because this would have hooked me more than the other 3 issues, the Rebirth, issue 1 and 2. Really enjoyed this. Deathstroke issue 3 gets 4.5 stars. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. This is Comic Uno. Let me know in the comments below, what was your worst pick of the week to best pick of the week. And of course, well, actually, next week I won't have Comic Uno episode, because I'll be at New York Comic Con. So sorry about that, guys. If I have time, maybe, but I'm 99% sure I won't be able to do a Comic Uno episode. But I will have a couple of reviews on my channel, and of course, check out Frontline Live the next week, where you can hear all my thoughts of my top 5 and at least worst pick. But hopefully you guys enjoyed. This is Comic Uno and Comic Frontline, and don't forget to follow me on Twitter. Don't forget to like my Facebook page. Also, in the description below, there are links to my comic book, Like Father, Like Daughter, and don't forget to like the Facebook page of Like Father, Like Daughter, and I'll see you guys later.